Hello and welcome to our fourth video on angles. I'm Mr. Chowdhury and today we're going to be looking at bearings. So if you haven't already watched our first bearings video, go ahead and watch that. It explains what a bearing is, and then come back to this video to look at how to measure bearings and how to label bearings. So this is our first task. What I'd like you to do is pause the video. What's the same and what's different between these two bearings? Okay, so the one thing we're missing from both of these is the actual angle of the bearing. So you've got 130 degrees and 320 degrees. Now what's the same and what's different? Okay, so if you have a look, both bearings have a north line like they're supposed to. Both degrees are in the angles are measured using 3 digits. We have our hundreds, tens, units, hundreds, tens, units. The only difference is the bearing on the left is the bearing of B from A, and the bearing on the right is the bearing of A from B. So we're going to do a little bit of a quiz. We're going to be looking at if the bearing is correct or not. So here's your first bearing. Is that correct or incorrect? Well, this one is correct. We have our north line. We're measuring clockwise, and our bearing is written as 3 digits. Hundreds, tens, units. Here's your next one. Correct or incorrect? Well, this one is incorrect. And the reason it's incorrect is we're measuring anti-clockwise. Remember, bearings are only measured clockwise. So here's your next one. Correct or incorrect? This one is also incorrect because we don't have a north line. Instead, we've got a south line. They are measuring clockwise, but they've not put in a north line. We're not measuring from north. Remember, we have to measure from north, we have to go clockwise, and we have to have 3 digits, a hundreds, a tens, and a units in our angle. What about this one? Correct or incorrect? Well, let's have a look at what we've got. We've got our north line drawn in. We're measuring clockwise, but our angle is incorrect. It needs to be 0.90 so that we get our bearing correct. Remember, bearings have to have a 100, a 10, and a unit. What about this one? Correct or incorrect? Well, this one is incorrect because once again, we're measuring anti-clockwise. What about this one? This one is incorrect because our bearing is not 3 digits. What about this one? This one is correct because we have our north line, our bearing going round, and our angle in 3 digits. So let's have a look at how we would talk about bearings and what bearings would be called. So here we've got a bearing drawn, we've got our north lines, and we are measuring clockwise. But what is this bearing called? What is this bearing called? Well, this bearing is called B from A, and the word from is the most important word. This is the key word in this bearing. So if we look, we are looking at B, the bearing of B, and we are coming from A. That means we're going to measure from A to B. That's how we know. The word from tells us where to measure from. We measure from A. So we're going from A to B. What about this one? What would this one be called? Pause the video, have a guess. Well, if you said the bearing of A from B, you're correct because we are going to A from B. So we started measuring at B and we're going all the way around to try and measure the bearing to get to A. And we can see we've gone from the north line, we've gone clockwise to get this bearing. So that is the bearing of A from B. What about this one? Well, this one is called the bearing of E from B. Once again, if we have a look, we're starting at B and we're going all the way around and trying to get to E. That's where the bearing is coming from. Notice that the letters don't matter. These letters could be anything. I picked A and B because they are the first 2 letters of the alphabet, but I could have picked anything. So this is why I changed A to E, but the bearing is still E from B. What about this bearing? What's this bearing called? Well, this bearing is called A from C. Nothing changes because we have 3 points. Nothing changes even though we have 3 points. We're going from C, we're starting at the north line of C, and we're going all the way around till we get to A. How much do we have to turn before we can start moving towards A? That's what the bearing is. Right, now, where would we draw the bearing? So we're given the name of the bearing. We're looking for the bearing of C from A. But where would we draw that? Where would we draw that? Pause the video and have a guess. Well, we would draw this over here. We're going to start at A because that's where we're coming from A. And we're going to go clockwise till we get to C. And this angle in red would be the angle we'd need to take to get from A to C. So the bearing of C from A is this one because we're coming from A and we're going to C. What about B from C? Okay, we'd start at C, we'd go clockwise until we got to B. And hopefully that's helped you learn where the wording for bearings come from. The key word, once again, is the word from. From tells you where to measure the bearing. From tells you where to measure the bearing. The bearing of B means where we're going to end up from C. So we're going to start at C and we're going to go all the way round till we get to B. Hopefully that's been useful. You can now go off and watch the videos from Mr. Amerson. And if you're really confident, you can go on Dr. Frost and Corbett Maths and practice some questions there. Hopefully this has been helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.